Welcome back to the State of series. Today we are looking at a fairly controversial job, at least in Endwalker, Summoner. The main reason it's controversial is due to the changes it underwent coming from Shadowbringers. On one hand, you have the ability to summon real primals in their full form, which is amazing, but a lot of players feel the class lost depth in favor of a more simple rotation, the most notable omission being the removal of all damage over time spells in favor of a more direct damage approach, which, a bit off topic, is an adjustment shared by other rework jobs in Endwalker like Paladin. I've seen a lot of people disagree with removing dots, and yeah, they're not that complex. I will say it can be annoying in certain raid encounters with a lot of downtime, P2, P3. If you have to spend a GCD reapplying a dot, it can be a bit annoying. It was really bad with Paladin, but it is interesting. It is interesting browsing the forums and watching the back and forth between people who are fairly indifferent or even enjoy the changes, and those who absolutely detest these changes. I've always had the opinion that while yes, having complexity in jobs is important to a certain degree, that's not the end-all be-all. You also have to look at encounter design as well. I really want to make a whole video talking about encounter design in this game. I want to wait, I want to knock out a few more encounters, get a clearer picture, but we're here to talk about Summoner, and personally, to stay as inoffensive as possible, really don't want to make anyone mad, I really like Summoner. Yeah, it's not the most complex job on the market, but for me, what I value the most in a job is its pacing. For example, I would consider Dark Knight to have pretty weak pacing. Its first 20 seconds are just off the rails, balls to the wall, just spamming buttons, but then you spend the next minute and a half waiting for the buff window. It's inconsistent, and the downtime is a little bit too long for my tastes, a little bit too long for my little brain. You know, I gotta keep going. With Summoner, not only is the pacing consistent, the rotation is also fairly flexible. There are some encounters where it may make more sense to mix up the order in which you summon your primals, or use spells like Ifrit's Gap Closer around certain mechanics. But my thoughts aside, now that we are in Endwalker's final patch, we've gone through all the raid tiers, how did Summoner do raid-wise? Did raiders continue to play Summoner in similar numbers when compared to Shadowbringers? If it's your first time watching one of these, we will be using FF logs as our primary reference point to really infer about a job's popularity. By no means is this data representative of the wider player base, but more of a niche portion that's honestly more interested in a video like this anyways. Okay? Okay. Taking a step back and looking at the last two Wings of Eden, Summoner does pretty well in terms of these parses, being number one for casters in both initial patches for Eden's Verse and Promise, but falls behind Red Mage for the latter patches, so it does look like Summoner was a pretty popular pick for initial progression. Obviously, like Red Mage, it has access to support skills like Resurrect, but it also does more damage. What we could be seeing is as gear becomes more regularly available, raiders gravitate more towards Red Mage as the damage gap wasn't nearly as wide after gearing. That, and we can also have a lot of re-clears deciding to roll Red Mage as well. Nonetheless, Summoner still has the highest number of parses, presumably making it the most popular magic DPS to raid with in Shadowbringers. Again, using the data pool we have. But Chisel, I don't care about Shadowbringers, you stupid, you stupid. What about Endwalker? That's the current expansion, you big fat dummy. That's really mean. That really cut deep. But what about Endwalker? Well, for Asphodelis, Red Mage stands as the most popular magic DPS for 6.0 with about a 2,000 parse gap in between it and Summoner. But that would change going into 6.1 after a whole host of potency buffs. Summoner stands as number one for overall DPS parses. Clearly the job changes were not enough to turn players off. Post 6.1 Summoner was a very popular pick due to its high burst and genuinely decent utility that won't make or break a fight, but is definitely useful to have for progression, and that is somewhat reflected in DSR as well, although Red Mage emerged as the magic DPS of choice for more statics overall in 6.1, but post 6.1, Summoner will consistently be the most popular pick. It is worth noting that DSR is pretty heavy on magic damage. It's the reason Dark Knight's so popular. Red Mage does get access to Magic Barrier, which reduces magic taken by 10% party-wide. One could make the argument that skill gave a slight edge for early prog, and Black Mage is just not even in the conversation. I mean, talk about a black sheep. Moving on to Endwalker's most controversial raid tier, Abyssos, where Summoner stands in 2nd place overall behind Dancer. This is almost certainly due to those early weeks and initial progression being a little tough. Black Mage does more damage overall, but especially in early fights like Proto Carbuncle with a ton of body checks with mechanics that are so easy to f up like Devour, it's really nice to have that extra as available. This is also the raid tier where dev talked to the whole raiding community and said, well, we could clear P8S with our own internal testing. I guess we're too good. I don't care what anyone says, that will never not be funny to me. But yeah, Summoner in Endwalker as of 6.2, even 6.3, is looking to be the most popular pick for magical DPS in terms of rating. Most notably in 6.2, Red Mage really seemed to fall off in terms of usage, which I do remember being a little surprised by during the actual raid tier itself. But when most parties pick only one magical ranged, Summoner was consistently that #1 pick. But do you know what's not consistent? Me. That's right, team, I do have to apologize. I have lit life get in the way of making videos. Between actual real-life obligations and relationships that I obviously prioritize over this, and just good old-fashioned procrastination, I haven't been pumping out videos at a cadence I can say I'm proud of. I'm definitely trying, I'm working on it. And if this is the kind of video you enjoy, or the kind of content that you enjoy, I do encourage you to hit the sub button. I truly appreciate every single one of you that views these videos, engaged with the content through comments or Discord, which you should join, by the way. Also, I'm branching out a little bit. Although I'm still streaming on YouTube fairly consistently, in the coming weeks I do plan on streaming over at twitch.tv. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Bit of a small indie website. There I'll be playing a wider variety of games, whether it's other MMOs, Pokemon, Mario, even Baldur's Gate 3. So if you could, give it a follow, join our Discord. And as always, we have to shout out our members. Thank you to Beatrich, Axiaris, and Irby-ish. You too can become a member for just $1 a month. Get a quick shout out on streams and YouTube videos like you see here. Thank you for allowing me this brief intermission. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. Now the next set of encounters begins with Omega Protocol, with Summoner being #1 for overall DPS parses, and just dwarfing its other counterparts, Red and Black Mage. As always, I do have to confess I am fairly ignorant on Omega Protocol. I do know it's a pretty controversial tier. From some of the threads and discourse I've seen online, one deciding factor I haven't brought up in terms of Summoner is its usage of instacast spells. The only two primals with casts are Garuda, which most players use Swift cast anyways, and Ifrit, but it's only 2 casts per summon. That absolutely has an impact on usage and makes it meld better into certain counters, like Omega Protocol. A lot of the testimony I've read mentions how well Summoner aligns with the fights and how Red Mage feels a bit clunky in comparison. Again, Black Mage, not even in the conversation right now. But seriously, something like limited cast is huge, especially given a fight with a lot of movement. Lastly, we have an Abyssos, and I won't drag this one out. It's the same song and dance going into both 6.4 and 6.5. Red Mage has it rough right now. The aforementioned lack of cast times, high burst, and utility that's just as good, if not better, than Red Mage just makes the choice clear for a lot of raiders, especially the performance-minded players who would be logging and looking into their parses. Thus do we see the data for Endwalker that Summoner is far and away the most popular magical range DPS, somehow more popular than in Shadowbringers. And my takeaway from all of this is just plain old curiosity, because with Summoner in Endwalker and its rework, you see the way the dev team is handling job design. You saw a very similar thing with Paladin, where a lot of complexity was stripped away in favor of a more simplified rotation, and you have to wonder where this leads us into Dawntrail. We know Dragoon and Astrologian are getting reworks next, but what about new spells of jobs like Summoner and Red Mage? What do they have in store to potentially close the gap between the two, or just make it worse? We can discuss and joke about job design, job modernization all we want. The reality is balancing is a very tough job for any developer, especially for an MMO. That weird side tangent aside, overall I'm still very pleased with Summoner as a job right now. I understand if you're not. I know there are a lot of players out there who aren't fans of the change. Like, I really understand having a job that you really enjoy playing and then overnight it's just not the same. That never feels good, especially if it's not a change you like. But I am curious to know what you all think of Summoner and Endwalker. Are you one of the many who dropped Red Mage in favor of it? Do you detest the changes and overall job design philosophy in Endwalker? Talk about it in the comments. I'm curious to read up on it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Nice try. Nice try.
Should have went to the other side.
God damn it.
Oh no!
Oh, I thought it was Redwood.
Try to get in the middle and pull you in there and then get out.
God damn
I
it.
did it the opposite way around. I flew to you first.